Good afternoon. Thank you for taking the time to interview for the Foundation to Battle Injustice. Please tell us a few words about yourself and how you ended up in the Donbass.
My name is Russell Bentley. My soldier name was Tejas. I came from Texas to Donetsk in December of 2014. A week after I got here, I joined the Vostok Battalion, People's Militia. Started serving in combat on December 31st, 2014 at a position called the Monastery, about 400 meters from the new terminal at the Donetsk airport. At that time, the airport was still held by the Ukrainian so-called cyborgs. I was there when the Sparta Battalion, along with the help of Vostok, took the airport back from the cyborgs. It's been ours ever since. I served for about a year in the Novorussian Defense Forces, first with the Vostok Battalion and the Sud Vremeny Combat Unit. Later, Sud Vremeny was transferred to Han Battalion Spetsnaz. I served with them for about 10 months. And then I served in 2017 with them for 4 months as MVD, military police soldiers on the front line on the Avdiivka front. Since then, I've been doing humanitarian aid and working as a war correspondent. I'm accredited war correspondent here in DPR, and I write counter propaganda, make videos. It's a very difficult situation right now, especially since these Operation Z started. The United States is blocking all kinds of honest news from here, and also they're blocking funds from coming to Russia or the East from the United States. So it's a hard situation. The information war is a real war. Our enemies are serious and use dirty tricks, but we are going to win, and we're doing everything we can.
It was a little delay due to the connection, I guess, but I got it. In one of your interviews, you stated that you decided to leave the United States after realizing the horror that your country did on the territory of other states. How did you manage not to succumb to the propaganda of the American media?
Well, I was very fortunate. I actually dropped out of school after the 7th grade. I never watched very much TV growing up. I was born in 1960. So I grew up at the time of the Vietnam War, the civil rights movement in America, and I taught myself. I spent, hours every day in the library reading books, and I read books by Martin Luther King and by Che Guevara and Ho Chi Minh, and also Karl Marx and Vladimir Lenin, and I understood that there was a whole different perspective in the world besides that which almost everyone in the United States believed. When I joined the Army, the U.S. Army in 1980, at the age of 20, I took a GED test, which is a high school equivalency test. And even though I'd only gone to school for 7 years, I scored a 98% on that test. So I had educated myself pretty well. When I went to college in the 1990s, had a 4.0, like 100% grade point average there. So, I got to say that the American education system was never as good as the Soviet system, but it was pretty decent back in the day. At least they taught me how to read well. And but nowadays it's a diseducation system. It's like a brainwashing system. That they not only don't teach you how to think critically, which I myself taught myself how to do, but they try and teach you not to think critically, to just accept what you're told, and whatever the teacher says is the correct answer on the test. I remember one time there was a thing published in the United States where a teacher told his class, and this is like in a high school class, the teacher told the class that a kilometer was longer than a mile. And one of the students stood up and kept arguing with him and saying, no, it's not longer than a mile, it's shorter than a mile. and the kid ended up getting disciplined by the principal for not agreeing with the teacher. And that's like a perfect example of what the U.S. education system is. So fortunately, I avoided that, and I avoided watching a lot of television growing up. So I was able to educate myself.
The crimes committed by NATO countries in the United States are really striking in their brutality. Tell us, please, how does American propaganda justify the actions of the American military contingent abroad?
They justify it, or they try to justify it by telling absolute lies. You can just simply look back at the history of the last 30 or 40 years. The attack on Yugoslavia was based on lies. It was completely unjustified. The attack on Iraq with the fake story of WMDs that they guaranteed that Saddam Hussein had, but he didn't, and there was none ever found. The attack on Libya, where they said Muammar Gaddafi was murdering his own civilians, also complete lie. Uh, and the same thing in the Maidan. I mean, it's a fact that the snipers that worked on the Maidan and killed more than 100 people were paid, armed, and directed by the U.S. government, the U.S. CIA. I mean, and where, like for instance, on Monday, the 14th of March, the Ukrainian army shot a Tochka U with a 1,000-pound anti-personnel cluster bomb at the center of Donetsk. They were aiming for the administration building, and they had, in fact, in the days before, set up false social media accounts that were telling people, hey, if your father or husband or brother is in the army, come to the administration building at noon on Monday to get information about, your loved one that's in the army. There was even text messages sent out to women whose loved ones were serving in the Donbass Defense Forces. And I know that for a fact because a friend of mine was wounded, and I went to visit him in the hospital shortly after the 14th attack, and his daughter was there too, and she showed me the text message on her phone saying, go to the administration building. So the Tochka U attack was, first of all, they set up a situation where they expected a lot of civilian women to be at a certain place, right. And then that's where they fired the Tochka U. Okay, and we hit, our air defenses hit it, and we disabled it, but the Tochka U has, the anti-personnel has 50 cassettes of cluster bombs. Only one of them went off, but that one, and it didn't hit the area that it was targeted, but it hit a couple of 100 meters away on University Avenue. And that one killed 24 people and wounded about 30 more. It's a very deadly weapon. It would have been 50 times worse had we not intercepted it. But the next day, a photograph that was taken of a man weeping over the body of his wife was published in the Italian newspaper, La Stampa, and it showed him weeping there, and it says the carnage, yeah. And it says, this is not a lie of, the difference of a few degrees of interpretation being misunderstood or something. This is a 180-degree opposite of the truth lie. And it's not the only case. Ukrop's shot on March 30th, another Tochka U, 1,000-pound bomb at Donetsk. It landed on an apartment building in Textilchik. It blew up 3 floors of that apartment building. And again, the next day in the New York Post, headline news, Russian attacks on Ukrainian civilians continue. And they show a photograph of the apartment that was hit by the Ukrainian bomb against DPR citizens. So that's how they justify it, by simply lying completely to idiots that are too stupid to think critically or to, investigate for themselves, who just simply swallow whatever they're told by the media or the government. And I want to explain what that problem is for the citizens of the United States. And I'm going to have to really explain it, I'm going to have to use a little mott here. But here's the problem. If you eat shit for long enough, you get used to it. But if you eat it for too long, you learn to start liking it. And a lot of people in the United States have started to like it. And they have no critical, they don't want to know the truth because they're afraid that if they actually, I mean, it's the same thing with like the 9/11, the attack on 9/11. The physical evidence is unquestionable that it was done from inside with controlled demolition. But people don't want to know that. It's more easy and convenient and comfortable for them to just believe the lie. And, and it's like, the social contract in the United States these days between people is pretty much, I'll pretend to believe your bullshit if you pretend to believe mine. And sorry for using bad words, but it's
I get it.
It's the only way that you can really express what it
Right.
is.
Right. The influence of Western countries is also evident in the example of the Ukrainian conflict. Millions, if not billions, of US taxpayer dollars are being allocated to finance and train Ukrainian servicemen and nationalists. What do ordinary Americans think about this?
Well, I haven't been to the United States in almost 8 years now, so I don't really know. I don't really watch very much U.S. media anymore.
Right.
But I mean, they simply swallow whatever lie they're fed by the government and media, and so I'm sure that the most majority of people there, think that Russia is really, the new German Wehrmacht army, when actually it's just the exact opposite. The United States literally is the Fourth Reich. They, and actually they have controlled this war in Ukraine since Maidan, since 2014. Nothing has happened here that was not on the absolute complete orders of Joe Biden and the CIA and the State Department. And that includes, the massacre in Odessa in May 2nd. That includes the airstrike on Lugansk on June 2nd. That includes MH17, which was shot down. I did an investigation. I went there where it landed, and I interviewed eyewitnesses who said, yes, there was 2 Ukrainian Air Force jets right behind that airliner, and they shot it down. It wasn't tabuk by the Russians or the separatists or even the Ukrainians. Eventually the Russians, who at first also verified it with their radar images from Rostov, they tried, in kind of like the under the table politics, they came up with this story about, oh, we found a piece of the book and it had a serial number from Ukrainian warehouses. And that wasn't true. That what they were doing was trying to give the Ukrainians a face-saving way to take responsibility, because they could say, oh, well, yeah, we shot the book, but it was an accident. But if you're shooting down an airliner, 8 miles high above the clouds from 5 kilometers away with a jet fighter, there's no way it can be an accident. But you can maybe make people think, oh, well, they accidentally pressed the wrong button or something with a book, But the true story is, the true fact is that airliner MH17 was shot down on purpose, on the orders of the U.S. It couldn't have been done without the help of the U.S. And so, that's the worst war crime of this war still to this day. 298 civilians were murdered, just to make a false flag against Russia. And again, the propaganda was already set up ahead of time. As soon as the plane came down, I mean, the SBU published on YouTube a so-called intercepted phone call of separatist officers discussing, saying, oh, we accidentally shot down this civilian plane. But it was later analyzed, and the first thing was, it was produced the day before the plane was shot down. This recording was. And the second thing is that, audio analysis went through and they could prove that it was clips from multiple different conversations that were stitched together.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I mean, this is the kind of propaganda that we're fighting against.
Right. You mentioned that U.S. was in Ukraine since 2014, and exactly in 2014, Victoria Nuland stated that since the collapse of the USSR, the United States has invested at least $5 billion to support democracy in Ukraine. How do you assess the influence of the American establishment and Ms. Nolan on the events in Kyiv in 2013-2014?
Well, of course, they'd been working long before the Maidan. I mean, of course, what would the color revolution with Yulia Tymoshenko was in what, like 10 years, almost 10 years before that, you know? I mean, ever since the fall of the Soviet Union, you know, these so-called NGOs, the State Department, a National Endowment for Democracy, all these guys, you know, and it's like, you know, it's like it's called in English, it's called astroturfing. You know, like when these, you know, terrible chemical corporations, you know, they start like a you know, their volunteer organization, and they call it, you know, for the better, you know, save nature organization or something. And it's again, this is what our enemies do. It's their absolute technique, is they use the exact opposite of the truth. Everything they say is a lie. Even if they say something that's factual, they do it only with the intention of deceiving the idiots that believe them. And so, of course, the USA was working long before Maidan to make exactly what happened in Maidan happen. You know, I mean, they've been supporting the OUN and the Ukrainian Nazi collaborators since the end of World War II.
I see. For the past 8 years, residents and civilians' infrastructure of Donbas have been the target of Ukrainian servicemen and nationalist groups controlled by them. Why, in your opinion, did the political leaders of Ukraine give orders to exterminate the civilian population of Donbas?
There's no such thing as political leaders in Ukraine. Those orders came directly from the United States, and particularly in the early years from Joe Biden before he went senile and lost his mind. I mean, but the order was given from Washington, D.C. to suppress and destroy all political opposition using any means necessary, using the same techniques that the German Nazis used in the Second World War, which is what we see, you know, attacks against infrastructure, attacks against civilians, just to terrorize the civilians. You know, I mean, the mass murder in Odessa on June 2nd, 2000, May 2nd, 2014 is a perfect example. They did it. They not only murdered all those people, but they did it on video. They did it publicly as to set an example, to terrorize people, to show that even peaceful protesters, this was what will happen to you if you do not submit, if you do not bow down to your new masters.
But why did the Western media cover up the genocide of the peaceful population of Donbas?
Because the Western media is absolutely complicit in all these crimes. I mean, it's not, you can't call them the media. They're a propaganda machine. They say what their owners and masters say. You understand, in the United States, like 4 or 5 corporations own pretty much every single outlet of media, of radio, newspapers, television, you know, internet, you name it. You know, 4 or 5 corporations own them. You know, Benito Mussolini once said, the founder of the fascist party in Italy, he once said that fascism would better be called corporatism because it is the merger of state and corporate power. And by that definition, the United States is absolutely a fascist state right now. For them, and they have absolutely no consideration for the welfare of the people. In fact, you know, I often ask my friends in America, I say, let me ask you something. What's the what that the U.S. government did something that actually improved the lives of American people, of average American people? And you know what? They don't have an answer for that. They don't have an answer for that because the U.S. government, everything that they say is a lie, and everything that they do only makes things worse. I mean, and it sounds like an absolute, you know, exaggeration or something, but really, I'm still waiting for someone to contradict me on that.
How do you assess the influence of ultra-right ideology on the Ukrainian army soldiers? Why does a country that lost millions of its citizens in the war against fascism support and strongly approve of the activities of nationalist organizations?
Well, first I want to say that, you know, it's again, it's they fly swastika flags in their barracks and on their military positions. They say Slava Bandera. They say Heil Hitler. They have, uh, like almost icons of Hitler, with like the kind of a frame that you would have a Orthodox icon. They have it with a photograph of Hitler in it. I've seen the photos. I've got the photos. And, I mean, these people, and more so than just goose stepping around wearing a Nazi uniform like some weirdo in their mother's basement, these guys actually use genuine Nazi techniques of mass murder and terrorism. And they do intend to commit genocide. And this is based on, and they're not only in the Azov and they're throughout the entire Ukrainian military now. And, they they've sold their souls or they've lost their minds or whatever, but it's based on decades of anti-Soviet, anti-Russian, anti-communist propaganda. And it's really, it's sickeningly stupid to hear politicians and media and even academians. I saw a video the other day of two professors from prestigious American universities having a big seminar or something and saying, well, there's no Nazis in Ukraine. The president of Ukraine is Jewish, so how could there be Nazis? And the stupidity, I mean, and for these people that are saying it, they're not stupid. They know they're lying. They know that it's a lie. I mean, it's a complete false, most hardcore Nazi battalions, and he's Jewish too. But these people that think they're Ubermenschen, that think that they have the right to decide who lives and who dies. It doesn't matter what race or what religion or what nationality they are. They're against humanity. And I'm a Russian Orthodox Christian, and I believe in God, and I believe in the devil, and I truly believe that this is a war of evil against good, and we're on the good guy's side. And God is on our side too, and the angels are with us. There were so many times that, I mean, I really had to call it a miracle. I mean, that bullets, I had a tracer fly, 30 centimeters from my head one night. I had a 120 millimeter artillery round hit the wall in the room that I was in and blow through the wall. It was a miracle I wasn't killed. I had snipers sneak up on me, and I didn't discover him until he was 50 meters away from me. I mean, just things like that. I really believe in guardian angels, and I really believe that this is a war between good and evil, and we're on the good side.
Amen. There is an opinion that America regularly adds fuel to international conflicts with one solid purpose: to earn as much money as possible on the sale of weapons and equipment. Do you think the Western establishment views the Ukrainian conflict as another investment project?
Of course they did, and not just the United States, the British too. I mean, these the NLAW tank missiles or anti-tank missiles that they have been providing to Ukraine, of course, not for free, but those missiles, and it's been proven, it's been shown on international media. Those missiles, they have a 20-year shelf life. A life of that they can be used in. That they, after 20 years, they're not safe to use anymore, or they don't work. And the missiles that the NLAW missiles the British sent to Ukraine were 19 years old. So they're selling them their garbage. I mean, and this is true. This is a fact, So they're selling them garbage at full price. And then, and it's the same with the United States. The Stinger missiles, they say don't really work too well. They say that the Javelin anti-tank missiles are, obsolete and not good. I mean, Americans are famous for making, very low quality military systems, and so yeah, I mean, the military industrial complex, which is a term that was first used by Dwight Eisenhower in his farewell speech. There was a U.S. Marine general named Smedley Butler, who he was one of the highest decorated Marines in U.S. history. He rose up from lieutenant to be the commandant of the Marine Corps. And in the 30s, after, he served through the First World War, the Philippines, Spanish Civil War, or Spanish War, whatever. And he wrote a book called War is a Racket. And, it's like a racket is like a crooked scheme or something. And he really spelled it out. He said that, that he was just, that the U.S. military is just like, the muscle for a bunch of gangsters. And they go wherever they want to countries to steal whatever they want to steal there, put down popular rebellions. And that in the meantime, the people that, he said, like in the First World War, there was a military a company that was supplying equipment to the U.S. Army, and they built, like 100,000, like wagons ride behind horses, and they were never used. They just sat there in a warehouse till they rotted, but they were all paid for.
Mm-hmm. How true is the judgment that by supplying weapons and training Ukrainian servicemen, the United States is trying to protect its laboratories, which have lost their secrecy since the beginning of the military operation? What, in your opinion, was actually developed in those labs?
Well, there's a few people, and I'm one of them, who've been talking about those biological laboratories now, and of course, and it's coming out right now that again proves that, that there was a few of us that knew what actually was going on. And they were developing pathogens that were, and they had even collected DNA of Russian and Slavic people in order to try and make a disease that would specifically attack Slavic people. And they were studying how to use drones that could fly over and spray out of aerosol, poisons. They were studying how to infect mosquitoes that they could release to come into Russia or Eastern Ukraine, the Donbass, and infect people. I mean, first of all, it's absolutely against international law. Second of all, it's, a genuine war crime. I mean, these are prohibited weapons. Biological weapons are absolutely prohibited. Third of all, it's, it's criminally insane because, to play with nature, to try and make a weapon out of nature, of course, it's always going to backfire. There's always going to be unintended consequences. And, and fifth of all, it's absolutely genuinely evil. Again, this is truly evil.
Recently, persecution and attacks on representatives of the Orthodox faith have intensified on the territory of Ukraine. Priests are beaten and abducted. People are afraid to visit churches. Recently, the Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine introduced a bill banning the activities of Russian Orthodox Church. In your opinion, what is the reason for this? Fascism and Orthodoxy are not compatible?
Of course they're not, because again, one side is I'm an Orthodox Christian. I've been a spiritual man all my life. I've studied all of the great religions, Zen Buddhism, the Native American religion. I actually lived with Native Americans for 2 years, joined their tribe, have an Indian name, went to their religious ceremonies every week for 2 years, over 100 times. And, I've also studied, I've read the Bible many times, all of it. I've studied the Quran. I've read the entire Quran. I've lived with Muslim friends, fasted for Ramadan with them, and gone to prayers with them. And I've, also taking a look at Catholic and Protestant Christianity. First of all, I got to say, first of all, there's a lot of good Catholic people. I have some great friends they have an organization called the Catholic Workers. They work with homeless people in major cities, and I mean, they do the work of Jesus Christ. They help people without pay, without ask for any thanks, without judgment, and they're great people. And there's a lot of great Catholics. I spent a lot of time in Mexico, and there's a lot of good Catholics there too. But the Catholic Church as an organization, again, it's satanic. It's filled with, child molesters, pedophiles, homosexuals, true degenerates. It's a multi-billion-dollar organization that doesn't really do anything for the poor of humanity in, to even a fraction of what it could do. And, it was, I don't know, 2 or 3 popes ago was this dude Ratzinger, who'd been in the Hitler Youth, who wore a Nazi uniform and said Heil Hitler when he was a youngster. But if there's more than a billion Catholics in the world, how can a church not find somebody better to be the representative and leader of that church than somebody who actually said Heil Hitler and was an actual Nazi, even when he was a kid? So, the Catholic Church was always repugnant to me, even though there's good Catholic people. The Protestant churches in the United States, are every bit as horrible as the Catholic Church. They have in Texas, especially, and in the South, they have this thing called mega churches. And they have these churches that are as big as football stadiums that, 20, 30, 50,000 people can come to. And they put on a big...
What's his name? Joel, it's in Texas.
Yeah,
you know
yeah.
who I'm talking about?
Austin or something like that.
Yes, Joel Austin,
Yeah.
exactly.
And he's just one of them. He's just one of them, But these dudes, I mean, they make billions of dollars. I mean, or at least hundreds of millions. They have multiple mansions. They have Rolls Royces and Bentleys. They have private jets, and they teach what's the worst is they have this philosophy. It's called a prosperity gospel. And they tell all these people that come there, they say, you know what? You're rich because you're good. God is rewarding you because you're good, and that's why you're rich. And all these poor people, they're poor because they're bad. And if they would only be good, then they would be rich like us. And it's complete hypocrisy. It's another absolute lie. It is, again, exactly the opposite of what Jesus Christ truly taught and how he truly lived, So, I despised that kind of religion. And then I came here and I met my godfather, Father Boris. He's a Orthodox priest. He's also a warrior. He served in Vostok with me. I met Father Theo Fon, who is also a priest, or a monk rather, who was captured and tortured by the SBU because when he was in the monastery in Nikolaevka during the early days of the war, he would call to Donetsk and he would warn them. He would see the grads setting up in the fields outside of town, and he would say, "Look, they're here. They're getting ready to start shooting grads." He was captured, tortured. He was later released in a prisoner exchange, and I have other friends that are Orthodox priests and Orthodox that I admire, that I trust with my life, that I hope to emulate and become like Bog. But these are true examples of the Christianity that Jesus taught. So I'm very happy and very proud to be a Russian Orthodox. I think it's the true religion. And also it's my theory, and it's just kind of something I thought of. I don't really have any evidence to base it on, but in the King James Bible, the Western Catholic Bible, there's about 20 years of the life of Jesus Christ that's just simply not mentioned in the Bible. And it's my opinion that probably during those 20 years when he wasn't being mentioned by the people in the Middle East, it's because he was here. It's because he was here in Crimea, Donbass.
Since the beginning of special military operation, Western propaganda has only intensified. Literally every few days, Kiev broadcasts another production aimed at discrediting Russian servicemen and their mission. As an anti-propaganda specialist, what do you think about this?
Well, of course, they would be doing it anyway, trying to discredit Russian servicemen. But they really have to do it, and they have to intensify it because of the proof, the real videos that Ukrainian Nazis are posting themselves of the torture and murder of prisoners and civilians, which has been going on throughout this war, but has also extremely intensified since the operation began. And people are getting to see these. The woman that was discovered in the basement of the Azov base in Mariupol that had a swastika burned into her back before she was murdered. Russian military prisoners, and not just recently, but since, that have swastikas burned or carved into them, the guys saying that, all wounded Russian prisoners should be castrated, the video of the mass execution of all the guys in their underwear in the back of the truck, the video of the guys being shot in the legs and in the groin and being left to bleed out while they're being kicked and yelled at. These are horrendous crimes, and and these are not fake. These are not fake.
Censorship of Western social networks has reached its apogee. Any publication that doesn't coincide with Washington's position is immediately deleted, and the account that posted this information on the network is blocked. Please tell us about your experience of encountering censorship on the web.
Well, it's going to take a little while. Let's see. First, when I started working as a war correspondent and a counter-propagandist in 2015. First, it was my Twitter account that was deleted in 2016. I had a PayPal that was also deleted. Patreon was also deleted. Then let's see. Oh, I did a GoFundMe fundraiser. Money to edit and publish a book that I had written about my time as a soldier here. It was for $9,000. I had 2 months to raise the money. In the first month, I'd already raised $7,000. And then the BBC wrote an article saying the communist soldier who uses charity to fund his war. And, then they completely lied. And, and then it got picked up by major media in the United States. Extreme pressure was put on GoFundMe, and eventually they sent all the money that those people had donated, they sent it back to them. Facebook deleted me about 2 years ago. I'd been on there for 12 years. I had 5,000 friends and, 5,000 followers. They completely erased my account for, completely bogus reasons. It's like community standards, and they never even tell you exactly what it was. They just say,
right,
you violated our. Just at the beginning of Operation Z, I made a short 40-second video. I was at the front lines, and I was by a column of Russian armor, and I just made this short video. I said, we're here, we're tough, we're ready. We're using only about 10% of our military potential. We're taking care, being careful not to hurt civilians. But we're going to win this war. We're going to help the good guys, liberate the good guys, and denazify the bad guys and kick their ass. And that video got 150,000 views on my YouTube channel in less than 1 day. I got 15,000 new subscribers in less than 1 day. And that video was deleted the next day, and my entire YouTube channel was deleted the day after that. So, the information war is a real war.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the West has not a monopoly, but a vast majority of control over major international social media and communications. I mean, even right now, as we're speaking on Skype, I have a very hard time sometimes with, doing an interview on Skype because it just what it did starts freezing or drops out or something like that. And, and that's made by Microsoft. So, I have to wonder if there's not somebody sitting there going, okay, now he's talking to you and hit a button, something like that. I don't know. I mean, I know.
Or maybe it's like a trigger words.
But I know that, uh-huh. And, and also, like the communication program called Zoom.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're familiar with that. Okay. It's blocked in Donetsk. And, I mean, I can sometimes use it, like if I use a VPN and, say I'm in Sweden or something like that. But, most of the time it's very, very glitchy, I mean, and so, I mean, that's exactly what they're trying to conceal the truth of their crimes. They're trying to, oppress or erase anybody that's telling the truth. And particularly me, because, you know, um, I'm not trying to brag or anything like that, but I have a talent for reaching people on an emotional level, and I'm serious about what I'm doing, and I'm trying to explain the context and the big picture about what's going on. I'm not like, some dudes that just say, "Oh, look, here's a dead body," and just to get views or get money. I came here in 2014. I was 54 years old. I didn't even really speak Russian. I wasn't in very good shape. And I came here, and when I came here specifically to join the army, to be in combat, and I didn't expect to live through the winter. I really expected that, it was the People's Militia then against the Ukrainian army, which is the third largest army in Europe, and, the odds were not good on an old man that doesn't speak Russian going against the third biggest army in Europe, making it for very long. And and to be honest, I did not expect to live through the winter, but I came anyway because I decided I would rather stand beside the heroes here and die with them than sit at home in the United States and be complicit in these crimes and think that I was, doing a revolutionary act by hitting like on a Facebook page or something,
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't come here to be an internet star or to make money. I came here to defend the people of Donbass and to kill Nazis, and that's what I've done, and I make no apologies about it.
You predicted an armed conflict between Russia and Ukraine back in 2020. Tell us, please, what prerequisites did you manage to see then?
Well, I just understood that, that it was inevitable, that there was never going to be any peace talks, that the people of Donbass would have fought against their own administration or even the Russians if somebody tried to force them to go back under the power of Ukraine. And I mean, and of course, I mean, there was never any likelihood of the Russians doing that, but we literally would have fought against anybody that tried to make us do that, So I knew that that was false. I knew that, that our enemy was genuine Nazis and that they had no intentions of doing anything but coming here and slaughtering everyone here that they could, just like the Germans did in the Second World War. They wanted the land, but not the people. And, and especially as things, the end of 2021, I saw that, the buildup along the Donbass front, which, I'm sitting less than, 10 kilometers from, Ukrainian army positions right now. The Donbass front is all along the major cities of Donbass, which is Donetsk, Lugansk, Makiivka, Gorlovka. They're sitting literally on the city limits. And I just thought to myself, if, and understanding that when the Ukrainian army came in 2014 and 15 to try and take back Donbass by military force and try to close off the border. But they were annihilated in the open country. Do that again, And I figured if I was a Ukrainian general and my task was to take back the land without consideration for, the human cost of civilians of the opposing side, what would I do? And I'd say, I'm 5 miles from the center of the city. If I can get my troops into the city mixed up with all these, with a million civilians in Donetsk, then that neutralizes, Russia's military advantages of missiles and rockets, because you can't use those without, in proximity of civilians without expecting casualties. Right. And so I really, and I was borne out as being correct. That was exactly their plan, to come right into the cities. And it's what they're doing in Mariupol and these other cities. Civilians as human shields. They're setting up their firing positions. Civilians, they're not letting civilians leave the combat area. I've actually seen in recent days was published a NATO training manual that was found at an Azov base. And in this manual, there was literally like stick figures in an apartment building. And on the first 2 floors was the red stick. It was one big one and 2 little ones on the first and second floor. And then on the 3rd floor is the black figure shooting out the window. So they were trained to use civilian
I see.
Shield by NATO specifically.
There is,
and I knew that if I knew that if the Ukrainians, I knew they were planning on the attack, and I knew that it was absolutely vital, not only to the lives of people in Donbass, but to the defense of Russia itself, that Russia make its move preemptively. And like Vladimir Putin once said, when he learned when he was a kid on the tough streets of Leningrad, if the fight is in, strike first. And so thank God and thank Vladimir Putin that they did strike first. They saved literally hundreds of innocent lives by doing so.
Thank you. There is an opinion that the current Ukrainian leader refuses to sign peace agreements with the Russian Federation only because every day of a military special operation brings him millions of dollars from NATO countries and the United States. Do you think the Ukrainian political leadership really benefits from what is happening on the territory of the country?
Of course they do, and they're the only ones that do. Zelensky is putting $100 million into his bank account in Central America. It's a German bank. It's America. He's getting money, not only stealing it from the Ukrainian national budget. He's getting bribes by Kolomoisky and Akhmetov and these oligarchs. And of course, he's getting money from the United States. And I mean, and so now he's a billionaire. They say he's got over $1.2 billion in that account. He's got a mansion in Miami. And once you become a billionaire, you become a genuine enemy of humanity, because every billionaire on this planet is a thief, because no one can be smart enough or work hard enough to actually earn $1 billion, $1,000 million. You can only scam it or steal it. So every billionaire on this planet is a thief by such proportions. And remember, most of these dudes, they don't just have $1 billion. That's chump change. There's guys with hundreds of billions of dollars now, and that's, and that's a theft of resources that can literally qualify as a crime against humanity. Because, with all these stolen billions, you could have fed all the starving kids in the world with that money. You could have built, 1,000 hospitals or, schools or something like that, And so, and instead of what they wasted on, it's just, it's really disgusting. But, you know, I mean, I'm a communist, and I believe that in a civilized society, there should be a level of quality of life below which no citizen should have to live. You know, they should have a basic food, housing, education, medical care, like that. And the way that you pay for that limit on how poor people can be is by making a limit on how rich people can be. And if you ask me, you know, maybe what, $1 million? No, you know, $1 million ain't that much anymore. And people can work hard and deserve and earn $1 million. So what, maybe 20 million? Well, that's quite a bit of money, but you know, people can earn that kind of money, you know. So what, 50 million? Well, that's getting to be a whole lot of money there. 100 million? Yeah, that's enough. 100 million is enough. You know, anybody, you know, that thinks they deserve or that they earned more than 100 million bucks, you know, they'll have to do something really impressive and good to convince me of that. And plus, they'd have to do some really hard talking to convince me that they need any more than that. That they need more than 100 million. You know, I mean, sure, we can go above 100 million after every kid in the place to stay and a decent education and medical care. Then we can raise it up to 101 million, maybe. But $1 billion anybody to have. At that point, it quits being money. It becomes power, political power. And at that point, they start thinking, they look at somebody, I mean, like me, the job I left in the United States when I came here, I made $50,000 a year, which was considered pretty good money back then, you know. It's considered great money now, you know, because everybody in the United States is getting so poor. But a guy that has $1,000 million looks at somebody that spends a year working for $50,000. You know, it's like, you know, it's like a regular person looks at an ant, you know, walking along the ground. You know, they consider themselves to be, you know, superhumans or something just because they stole that money, you know. So, you know, that's where it all comes from. It's these people, and it's not just in the United States. You know, all billionaires are enemies of humanity.